Supply side progressivism is an idea I've been circling around, I'd say actually for a couple of years, and in many ways since moving here. And I would describe it as a coming together of three threads of observation or of inquiry. So, one is simply moving to California and a state I'm from. I grew up in Irvine, California. I went to school at UC Santa Cruz and UCLA. And then I moved to Washington, D.C. when I was 21 or so, and then came back 14 years later to the Bay Area. And this is a state governed by Democrats, governed by liberals, that has a lot of pretty profound problems that, for all of its vaunted progressivism, is not getting in a lot of important areas progressive outcomes. And I would particularly say that's true around the ability to live a decent lifestyle on a normal middle class salary. And so one thing about being focused on the political problems here separately from the national stage is, when you're in Washington, like say in 2010 or 2011, and you're watching Republicans threaten then as now to breach a debt ceiling for no reason and cause a global financial crisis, you get really focused on the problems of the Republican Party. But here you have to be focused on the problems of progressive governance. So that got me thinking about, well, what is a problem in California? The problem in California continuously across a range of issues is insufficient supply of typically physical goods. We have a lot of intangible goods, a lot of knowledge economy goods and capital in California. But when you talk about enough housing, enough mass transit, enough University of California system schools, enough clean energy capacity, enough transmission lines, we have real problems. So why was supply such a problem in so many places, not just California, but you look at Washington State, you look at New York, where liberals govern. That's piece one. Piece two is we transitioned from an era in which the big problems in the economy were demand side. Aftermath of the financial crisis, you're dealing with very low, very persistently low demand. You have people like Larry Summers in a previous guise talking about secular stagnation and an enduring economy without enough demand. And so a lot of us were focused to recover the economy on the problems of demand for a long time. And I think it's worth not underplaying this. We more or less solved the problem of demand. And that was in part through government policy, in part through a very accommodating Fed, in part through Donald Trump and Republicans deciding they actually did not care about austerity. And as soon as he got into office, spending a shit ton of money and putting a bunch into tax cuts. So we moved from demand being the problem to supply being the problem. Inflation, obviously, which we're kind of still living through, although it's curbing a little bit, prices. And behind the sharp rise in post-pandemic prices, you have what my wife Annie Lowry called in a sort of viral article a couple of years ago, the affordability crisis. The high cost of housing, of healthcare, of childcare, of education, et cetera. So this sort of moved to what I've called in some places a politics of prices. And the final thing I'll say is that I'd been thinking for a long time, and particularly after my first book, Why We're Polarized, about what does a politics of technology look like? And that thinking got even sharper during the pandemic when you watched political political solutions to problems run out of steam fairly quickly. We cannot maintain distancing, say for very long, or lockdowns. But technological solutions like vaccines really prove worth their weight in gold. And in particular, there with Warp Speed, Warp Speed to me is a really remarkable and inspiring program where you actually did have the government step in, say, we really want to see a supply of this invention emerge very, very quickly. We're going to make it easier to do so. We're going to provide certainty in getting there. But once we do that, we are going to ensure that distribution is equitable. And the vaccine really is remarkable in terms of, I think, how equitable that distribution was, at least early on. Um, and add that into climate crisis, where I think most people understand that the solutions we need rely very heavily on innovation. That gets you thinking about what other innovations we need to solve the problems we have. I'm a big animal rights and animal suffering person. I don't think we're going to make any progress on that unless we invent really remarkable alternative proteins that are tastier and healthier and cheaper and so on. And so that got me thinking a lot about politics of technology. And sort of those are the three main tributaries for me into what becomes supply side progressivism, which is how do you focus on the supply of things we need to realize the kind of world and economy and society that progressives like me at least claim to want.